Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the March 23rd meeting of the Strategic Priorities, Communications, and Intergovernmental Cooperation Committee. Deputy Mayor Yankoff, His Worship Mayor Brown, Interim CAO, Donna. Councillor McKinnon has joined us online, and pleased to welcome our new recently minted CAO, Eleanor Mohammed, joining us here today. So, Eleanor, is this your first committee meeting, or have you been to, has there been others since you started on Monday? Third. Jeez. Jumping right in. Good stuff. Love to see it. All right, so we'll get called to order. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest? None? Could I have approval, a motion to approve the agenda? I have one change that I do want to recommend. Donna, interim CAO Donna, would like to move the MJA update up to the first item, as she has some other business she has to attend to following this, if that's okay? Agreed? And, okay. So, motion approved then for the agenda, moved by Mayor Brown and seconded by Deputy Mayor Yankoff. Previous draft minutes, could I get a motion or any discussion on the previous draft? Not much there, okay. And seconded by Deputy Mayor Yankoff. Business arising from the minutes? Seeing none? Okay, so let's move on to the discussions for today. So we'll start with Interim CAO Donna Waddell, and she's going to provide us a bit of an update on the Municipal Government Act.
Mr. Chair, and we'll have to remember so that Councillor McKinnon can hear to make sure we speak into the microphones. I know I was on the other end of that for a while. I really don't have much to say on this, except to say that I think it was 3 years ago, the province asked municipalities to give input on the MGA, on some of the suggestions on the MGA, and the city of Charlottetown did. I'm not sure if it was 20 or 21 we did that. But we did write a letter. We agreed with some of the things. We disagreed with others. We're in the process of digging that out for your review so that you can have a look at some of the things that we did. And there were certain things that we had asked for. Basically, the things that we had asked for that were different than other municipalities, they didn't agree to. We talked about terms, length of terms. We talked about things like that. So I don't.
Length of terms.
Length of terms for mayor and council.
Okay.
There was a couple of other things that we had asked for that they did not agree to. We have that correspondence. I've seen it since I came. There was a spreadsheet. We'll make sure that it gets to Eleanor, and Eleanor can review it and bring it back to you. I anticipate that the province, once they get back to work, the new government will probably put another call out for amendments to the MGA, and that would be the time that you really want to take the federation would probably take the lead on that and assist us and assist the municipalities in that, but we certainly want to be aware of it. On another matter with respect to the MGA, Mr. Chair, you will recall in one of your very first meetings, if not your first, we put out the province had sent to us the proposed code of conduct regulations. They had been circulated to council in September. The date had been extended from the end of October till the end of November. You, I think, did this in December. You sent it out to council. You mentioned it at council, maybe at your first council meeting, or it might have been your second. And to the best of my knowledge, neither you nor I had any response from any elected officials on the proposed code of conduct regulations. I heard from the province last week, or maybe it was the week before, that is the intention of the province to bring those code of conduct regulations into into force come April the 1st. Now, that, of course, was, it must have been pre-election, the call of the election no, it was post, because, anyways, I would anticipate that if they're not here April 1st, they'll be here shortly thereafter. And when I asked, they told me that there were no changes from the draft that we saw. Mr. Chair, as you know, the significant issue was in those was what were the penalties, and that's where the issue, the big changes are. So that I would anticipate in April will come into force.
Big changes where, Donna, where did you say? What was it?
In the penalties for
The disciplinary
the
measures.
Under the
discipline-
Code of Conduct.
under the code of conduct in the regulations, and then our bylaw, the province told me they will be drafting a bylaw. Our bylaw, I did a fairly thorough review of our bylaw, with the exception of the changes. Ours is, they basically took our bylaw and worked with our bylaws as the example. Our bylaw is pretty much in compliance. Mr. Chair, I'd open to any questions.
Mr. Chair, can I just ask?
Go ahead. Your
Donna,
worship.
as you know, prior to the election in 2022, we did have the chief electoral officer in for a strategic priorities committee meeting about the election. And then during the election of 2022, as we all discovered as candidates, Elections PEI were not allowing any update on who voted because of a privacy complaint that was forwarded to the privacy commissioner. So if, as a candidate, you wanted to find out who was going to the poll, you weren't allowed to have, you were not permitted to have election clerks representing any of the candidates. Anyways, so there was no update because of the privacy issue. But in this provincial election, 2023, someone must have changed something, because I know we are governed by the MGA under section part 3 of our elections. Candidates who are running in this provincial election will have access to updated voters going to vote. Can we find out how that happened? Because as a candidate for mayor and the candidates for all candidates across the island were not permitted to get updates because of the privacy issue. So I don't know if we go through the chief electoral officer or we would go through the clerk of the Legislative Assembly, Joe Jeffrey, but could we get an answer to that? It ties into the MGA because I'm looking at Part 3 elections, and there are about 10 divisions to it. And I know there are more because there's a penalties section on elections too. But could we get something on that, please?
I believe I've handed that file over to the new CAO.
Oh.
So I'm sure she will be delighted to look into that. And I certainly do recall, Your Worship, the complaints that I heard about not having people in the polling stations, and so I'm quite surprised why it wasn't good for the goose.
Yeah, but not just at the polling stations. You weren't permitted or allowed to phone Elections PEI to get an update because of the Privacy Act, but a provincial election rolls around? Oh no, it's all rules, different rules. So I'd just like to find out, if it's not the chief electoral officer, if it could be Joe Jeffrey, who is the clerk of the Legislative Assembly. Thank you.
It's a question worth exploring.
Yes, because, Mr. Chair, I've worked many elections since I was 16 years old. This is the first time I've ever witnessed in a civic election where, as a candidate or working with a candidate, not to get access to voters list, because it is a public election. We're not voting for a board of directors for a private corporation. It is a public corporation. And there are, I think, 59 municipalities across the island. So that's 59 incorporated bodies that were denied that access. Thank you, sir.
You're referring to the updated, so as a person votes, it gets recorded. That's what you're referring to, is it
So
not?
in the election of 2018,
We
were
that
allowed-
was available. You
yeah,
could
we
see
were
when
allowed to
someone
have
did vote.
election clerks representing the candidates, plus it was mitigated by the fact that Elections PEI were sending out updated list of who voted.
Yeah.
Just the numbers,
Yep.
not the names, the numbers. So Norman Beck in Ward 3 would be, let's say, number 25. They wouldn't give your name, they'd just give the number. So privacy was still, part of that process, but all you had to do was look at the voters list to see who was 25. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anything else on the municipal government for Donna? Okay. Thank you, Donna. You're excused.
Trevor can't hear you unless he's been given this.
Okay. All right, next item on the agenda, a branding update, and I'll call upon our Strategic Initiative Officer, Carly Siapas, to take over from there. Carly?
Thank you, Chair and members of committee. So the report that's in your package today really gives highlight to our corporate brand and the existing visual standard and graphic guide that was implemented a number of years ago, but brings rise to the brand guidelines. This is the new piece that we've worked on. So just for quick background, the visual standards that we had recently or had previously approved doesn't contemplate typography, color, or graphic elements. So that leaves us with a little bit of a gray area in terms of actual application or technical aspects of our corporate brand. So informally, we've been applying these, but what we have in your package today is just the formal brand guidelines to give guidance to the technical application of our corporate brand. So nothing really new, I would say. Of course, you're going to see it together in one place, but I'm here to answer any questions that you might have around these guidelines.
Deputy Mayor Yankoff?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for your report. I was around when we made the first policy here, and the changes that you're bringing forward are the evolution of this. I'm just curious, there's absolutely no City of Charlottetown branding on our Charlottetown Hall website. There's no Charlottetown logo. It doesn't look like anything. When we go into these public meetings, it does not look like it's a Charlottetown branded. And I'm just wondering, how come that website has no Charlottetown on it?
Thank you for the question. So through the chair to Deputy Mayor Yankoff, I did see that question come through social media based on the recent OP sessions that were taking place. We're looking at that to see how it's done. We've also just initially looked at some of the other municipal websites in consideration to or against their community engagement platform, such as our Charlottetown Hall. And many of them don't actually look the exact same. They've chosen to have supplementary branding. And in our case for Charlottetown Hall, that supplementary branding was also approved and endorsed by committee and council last year when we did bring that forward. In saying that, I did see that comment, and it is something we're going to review, whether it's adding another piece of logo beyond the introduction paragraph that identifies it as a City of Charlottetown engagement platform. So I definitely respect the comment, and we're going to look at that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just to follow up, this comment come up, as Carly mentioned, at the meeting the other night because of trying to find out who's charlottetownhall.ca. But I know when we discussed it, and I believe Deputy Mayor Yankoff was the chair of the strategic, it was Councillor Ramsey. But at that time, when we were discussing it, I always think that when I look at branding is consistent. So if we were developing a charlottetownhall.ca portal, which, Carly, is great because it's not content, image heavy, you can get into it easily. It's very easy to get into, navigate through. Great portal. I think we just need, like I see right here on my screen, Charlottetown, great things happen. Those are the symbols we need, because when you look at branding, it's all about consistency, and I know you're quite familiar with that, Carly, and I think that consistency has to include what we use as branding throughout the municipal government communications and everything we do, because the communication, if it's seamless, it's easy to understand, and people are very willing to buy in or just accept it that, oh, I understand where this is coming from. But again, the charlottetownhall.ca portal, beautiful portal, just need more exposure to. It's a Charlottetown, City of Charlottetown portal.
I think in terms of consistency and also understanding connection to. So if we're seeing something, I think it's a valid point. And it's just another reinforcer, visual reinforcer that we already have it there. I'd support that too. Yep. Alrighty. Any other questions for Carly on this part? No? Good. Let's see. Okay. Next item on the agenda, the naming rights policy. Who wants to? What? I don't know if we designated.
Mr. Chair, could I just ask the deputy, I think this went through Human Resources first, and then we moved it over to Strategic Priority. So that would, I think, bring it back to Human Resources. So someone in Human Resources Department must have developed this. She did? Oh. Well, Sue's down in her office. Do you want me to go get her? We can delay it and then get her to come in. I think this is something we should discuss today because there appears to be there's an urgent need for addressing it.
Well, I mean, for sure. I just don't know why. I think it has to land somewhere, I guess, whether it's here or Human Resources.
Oh, no. I'm
know,
just giving the
sure.
background history, Mr. Chair, is that it
So
was under.
is this?
It
now
is
our
with,
domain?
it is with strategic priorities, communications.
Okay.
And intergovernmental cooperation. Oh, no, it is with this standing committee. The previous history is that it was with human resources, communications, and administration.
Well, I
Right,
guess
and
as the
and
author of.
it was moved and changed in the terms of reference to belong
Right,
here.
right,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I thought I heard you say that it was gonna be going back to Human Resources. No, okay.
Oh,
All
it's
right.
staying here.
No, that's good. I guess as the author, if Sue's available, and we can get her, maybe what we'll do, Carly, in the interim, do you want to talk about the committee business list? We can or the, sorry, coalition, yes, I'm sorry, I skipped it, yeah.
No, I was just gonna say we skipped tonight.
What? Good,
Thank you, Chair Beck. And this will be brief and it'll be familiar to Mayor Brown when he returns here. So joining the Coalition of Inclusive Municipalities is really a proactive step and one that this previous term of council is probably familiar with. So I'm going to give a bit of background and then catch us up to speed because I have some late breaking news on that. So it's a proactive step that we can take really around our public-facing DEI efforts, and that's something that I know is really important to this council and even previous councils. So, as you know, on the horizon, there's a few things that may come forward, including the DEI Framework and Action Plan. HR is also including diversity and inclusion training for staff and leadership going forward in this upcoming year, which is nice to see that alignment. And in speaking with HR just this morning on some of those upcoming opportunities around DEI training, they also refreshed me, because before my time in June 21, HR committee, followed by council, actually accepted the request to join the coalition, and the next step was for the mayor to sign the declaration and for us to formally join. So I'm kind of catching myself up to speed a little bit here. I just learned that just before the lunch hour. So really, the report before you today is a bit of a refresh. It's really good information, in my opinion. The only update I would say is when you would have formally looked at it with the previous term of council, there was 82 member municipalities in Canada. Currently, there's 96, so that would make us probably 97 if we just finalize that paperwork and dot the i's and cross the t's. So happy to answer any questions today, but I'm sorry that I'm just bringing this news to you. I've just learned it myself.
Any questions, comments?
Just an issue that came up during the election 2022, Mr. Chair, is that there's a lot of interest in diversity, inclusion, equity, inclusion, diversity. And one of the commitments I heard, not only from myself, but other candidates, that we have to look at the possibility of establishing a task force. Again, the task force would just run parallel to what we're doing internally. And I've spoken to Carly about that. We do have divergent views on it, but I think we can come together on it, and I don't think we're reinventing the wheel. I'm sure that there have been other task force. Again, it's just that opportunity to get public input, to give another lens to it. I don't know if Carly wants to answer to that now or just leave it till the next time we address it.
I'll just add comment through the chair to you, Your Worship, to say DEI, now that it's part of my portfolio, it's obviously a priority for the corporation and a priority for my work plan as well. So I think all ideas are good. I do think part of the work that the consultant will do, if it comes through this operating budget, will be to look at all of those options and opportunities. So I think everything is going to be on the table, and then that's for really committee council to help guide as well.
Thank you.
Very good. Okay. Thank you, Sue, for joining us here. Maybe what we can do, we have the naming policy in front of us, and maybe we can, I guess, maybe would it be worthwhile to just provide a brief background in terms of how it came about, why it came about, that sort of thing, and we've had the opportunity to review elements of it, so maybe just for the viewing public, we could have a little bit of an update on a bit of a background or refresher, that sort of thing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. This arrived on my desk not too long after I came here last fall. I think it had been on a number of desks, but it predominantly emanated from Parks and Recreation, I do believe, because a lot of the property request related to naming was on park properties. So their department head had taken first kick at the cat, if you will, as far as looking at what kind of policy we might need for the overall corporation versus just specific to one municipal asset. So I took it on to research what happens in other jurisdictions with regards to naming. And there's really two key elements to it, Mr. Chair. One is around corporate naming rights, because I know that also came to the council's attention with one particular property, and processes around, unsolicited requests or us going out onto the market looking for naming rights proposals. So that became an element of the work in this document. But it's really predominantly about naming our assets, our municipal assets. And there is another document on road naming that runs its own course that's referenced in here. So it's not meant to, this policy is not meant to address or supersede street and road naming, but it's meant to complement it. So basically the main objectives around the policy are making sure we have a systematic and consistent approach to how we manage and report on naming opportunities, how we provide guidance to anyone who wants to make a recommendation on naming one of our properties, making sure that we protect the reputation of the city and its assets. And we do that consistently when we're considering this, so have some sort of criteria in place. And making sure that there's recognition, and this is segues from Carly's conversation earlier about diversity and inclusion, that when we're doing this, we're taking that into consideration, and it's one of the lenses that we're applying to naming. So the scope is outlined there, as I had mentioned earlier. The general principles are also outlined with regard to the different opportunities that might exist or where this might come up. And it's meant to be vetted through our records management person. So the initial ask would come in from there, or come into that office, and then she would in turn send it to the appropriate department, depending on where the property in question is, where it resides departmentally. So the commemorative, whole section, it's in commemorative, is in your section 9, and it speaks to the different opportunities that might exist, or the considerations that might exist for commemorative naming, and with respect to how people would actually go through the application process. We'll have an actual application form that we would have online that people can complete, that will have our policy attached to that whole application, so people can see the principles and the framework for the policy, and understand where their request might fit in. And as you can see at the very end, then we also have the policies that relate to that. And we already have a memorial bench program that's in place where people can commemorate an individual through that. As I mentioned earlier, we have the road naming guidelines, and we also have the sustainable procurement policy that's on a course to completion as well through a couple of our departments. So those will all tie into this policy as well when it's properly vetted.
Okay. Any questions about this?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Brad?
just a clarification, Sue, related policies. City of Charlottetown Sustainable Procurement Policy, I haven't seen it because it says pending 2023. Can you just tell us offhand, does it have naming rights in it, or is there something that's related to what we're talking about here?
There
It must
could
be.
very well be
Okay.
a catch of some sort that ties this in. Until it gets approved, we'll know whether or not there is an actual link, and if there's not, we'll just take it out of our related policy documents. I just wanted to capture it just in case there were elements in there around the naming piece.
So, Sue, just looking at section 9, I know that the chair has already referred to going over this policy, so have I, and I'm sure the deputy has, along with Councillor McKinnon. Commemorative naming, so can that be issued or submitted by the family? Could it be submitted by the councillor of the ward? And I know with policies, they have to be adopted or received by council, so do we have to do that first before we commence any outreach? I'm just trying to get some guidance because there is a councillor that is asking for this to be, well, it's been on the books, 2 years? And I think we're coming now to the end of the road and getting it in place. So could you just, again, I should know that, but I'm asking for your guidance.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through the chair. Under section 9.3, you'll see all unsolicited naming or renaming requests shall be made in writing. So if you were to use the example of one that's been in the hopper, if you will, for the last couple of years, we would need to have something made in writing through this process. So they would fill out this application form, whatever that looks like. It might not be the one that I'm recommending. It could be a version of that. So that form would be completed. They would provide any necessary accompanying information with that as per the commemorative naming section. And obviously they want to connect the dots with what we're listing as criteria, so that when their application comes in, it's married up to what we feel justifies a naming consideration. And it would go through the process, as I mentioned earlier, through our records management clerk.
So just as a follow-up, so following process, policy and procedures, this policy that we're looking at right now has to be recommended to council to accept, receive and accept or adopt, and then the process of developing, naming application form Appendix A, will that be ready by, if we forward this by the April meeting, the regular monthly meeting in April, will it be ready that we can incorporate that into this policy request of council?
There we go. Yes, Your Worship, to answer that question with respect to turnaround, as soon as it's approved by council, this policy is ready to go. So, and the application form that I provided Carly is we have an application form ready to go. So it would just be a matter, if there's not significant amendments, it would just be a matter of getting the information on our website, we'll probably do some sort of communications through the communications department saying, if anyone wishes to do this, we have policy and procedure in place now. This is the application process, and we're ready to roll. So I don't see a significant turnaround time there.
I just want to say thank you, Sue Fraser. I always say Sue Hendricken, but it's Sue Fraser. Thank you for moving this so quickly. And I'd love to move the adoption of this policy, but I'm waiting for the deputy to.
I just, you have a question? You go ahead, Deputy.
Thank you, Chair. I'd love to see a copy of the application as well, but that's not in the package? I would love just to have a quick little, would you like to see it, Your Worship? Yeah, thank you. But it's a great policy.
But Deputy, I think looking through, I know you've perused the policy along including all of us. I think the policy stands for itself. It looks great. It's ready to go. Sue has done her homework in looking at other best practices. So yeah, the quicker that we can move this through the system, the better. And
Yeah, I agree with you, Your Worship. It's long overdue and it's great. It's a good policy. And it just simplifies the process now. People will know when they apply that here's the criteria. Yeah.
I did like the last part there in 10.1 in terms of the RRFP, just in terms of securing some of those, the naming rights for commercial naming rights opportunities as well, too. I think that's, in terms of being open and fair and accessible to everyone, I guess. I think that's an important part as well, too, so.
And Chair, I know in last term, we talked a lot about when policies come forward, that they would be vetted through our legal. Was this vetted through legal?
No idea.
I won't ask you, CAO Mohammed, because you probably wouldn't have the answer to that just yet.
Sue, the question was asked by Deputy Mayor Yankoff. Has this been vetted through legal, this policy, or is there any requirement to do that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to wait till I got back to an actual microphone, just so everyone can hear what I'm saying. This isn't the kind of document we would typically go through legal. If that's the wish of the committee, I can suggest it. I don't see anything, like if we were to follow the path with corporate naming rights, then that is a little heavier piece of business with probably a lot of language in it that might be vetted through legal, but this general policy, I don't see as being something we would need to vet through our own solicitors.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, if I could just add, it's not a legislative issue. This is a
Yeah.
policy.
Yeah.
If it was legislative, like a bylaw, just no different what province or the feds do, that if they do put anything through a legislative process, there has to be legalized to make sure the ands, the commas and so forth are there. This is more about just something that can be amended by council, doesn't have to go to a public consultation. So it's, I think, vetting it through. Good question, Deputy. I think it's.
And I just have just a follow-up question, probably slightly unrelated to my last question. So what happens if somebody puts an application in and it's for somebody who's deceased? Who do you get permission from to allow, like, if you're not alive anymore and someone wants to use your name, who gets to approve that your name is allowed to be somewhere? Like, is a family member, the person who's in charge of that estate, like, how does that work?
Guess that's up to the family if they're going to designate someone in there to honor someone. Yeah, I mean, it would be part of the application. That would be their decision, I guess, to make. And then we would use the criteria to determine whether it's something that fits, I guess.
And you'd have to be alive to submit it.
Sue, I had a question under Section 9(1), Section C, where I know you looked at other jurisdictions to see what the, I guess, best practices or what's being done elsewhere, where it says an individual may be recognized for a significant financial contribution to a park or facility, where that contribution significantly benefits the community that the park or facility serves. I think the term significant financial contribution could mean many things to many people. I don't know whether there is a necessity to further define that or to put some parameters around that, because someone might think that $10,000 is a significant contribution. Someone might think that $1,000 is a significant contribution. Someone might think that a significant contribution means 50,000 plus. So I think when we're looking at that, and that might be I don't know what's done in other jurisdictions, and I don't know, I'm not suggesting what a reasonable amount is, like in terms of that, but someone might be coming in and say, well, what we're proposing here is significant. And we would say, well, in our view, it's not significant. Well, what's your reason for saying that it's not a significant contribution? So it might be something to consider. But again, I concur with His Worship and the Deputy Mayor that it's great to have this policy. I'm just trying to think of potential pitfalls or potential areas that we might have to put some parameters around.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I did see the email and responded to the email that Carly sent with regard to the discussion on this before it came
I didn't see
to
that.
the room. Oh, okay, my apologies. I don't have that email in front of me, but in that particular section, I did say that that's subjective. There's no question. The word significant is subjective. And I had a concern about putting an actual amount in there, because what might seem like a lot for one park might not be as much for like Victoria Park. So to actually put a baseline in there would have maybe boxed us into a bit of a corner. And I think there's different elements of this policy that's subjective, as far as even, the nominated individual exemplifying the values of the city of Charlottetown. But that's pretty broad. So, a really good writer doing some nominating could have all kinds of wonderful things to put with respect to values and that. So this whole policy has subjectivity to it. There's no question about it. So I think what we need to own at the end of the day is that this provides a framework for people applying. And at the end of the day, we just have to use our own due diligence on whether it's worthy or not, rather than boxing us in too tight on what the actual
I'm fine.
valued?
I'm fine with having the. I'm just trying to advocate a little bit here, saying, well, someone may have a differing view, but it's basically up to us to determine whether that's a significant contribution or not. It's basically what you're saying.
Essentially, yes.
Okay.
And we would hope that whatever department is responsible for that piece of infrastructure will do their homework and ensure that they're bringing forward a really solid name and nomination that everyone can be comfortable with.
And Mr. Chair, if I could just direct your attention to Section 4 under definitions. Section 4C, commemorative meaning or naming means an asset or a portion of an asset. I think Sue's trying to keep it broad so that we don't get pigeonholed into a number. And Sue, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought the Department of Economic Development, Tourism, festival events, do they not have a criteria that is, I don't know if it's regionally or nationally accepted on naming rights for, let's say, a rink? Just use that this amount will get you this number of years, this amount will, and the reason I bring that up, Mr. Chair, and I'm sure that our new CAO probably heard of this issue, but it was the whole Simmons Accra Arena facility naming issue that was brought to the attention of many who live in Charlottetown and live around the island about the contribution from our first offer was an next amount of money over 15 years, which, many did the math on it, worked it out by day. Well, actually, they worked it out by year, went down to month by day. I was waiting for the hourly rate to come out. But what it came to was that naming rights, when you tie a dollar value, talk to the university. They'll tell you what it costs to name a rink or what it costs to name an alumni building. That's what we have to be looking at is other best practices. But I think we're covered under means an asset or portion of the asset. So it's open for interpretation. If I'm wrong, Sue, just correct me.
No, thank you, Your Worship. And Mr. Chair, in Section 5, where we talk about principles, there is a language in there around naming rights agreements. And certainly to the mayor's point, I know when I was out at Capillary Recreation Inc., Bell Alliance Center, we did participate through Economic Development, Tourism, and Culture in a study that was done to assess naming rights on key assets in the city so that we're not going blind into any kind of unsolicited asks or any kind of negotiated arrangements with the corporate community on the value of our asset. So I think there's to the mayor's point, there's been work done on that to quantify what Simmons might be worth or to quantify what Bell Alliance Center and Eastlink Center and some of these properties that are on the market, if you will, for naming rights consideration, that we've quantified what they're worth and that we have language now in this policy that speaks to the rules of engagement for how we would go about doing naming agreements. And to the Deputy Mayor's point earlier, in 5.9, it does talk about doing those in consultation with legal counsel.
Well, I'm in agreement with His Worship to move this forward to council. Yeah.
Could I just add one thing, Deputy Mayor? Where it says related policies, could we find that policy that Sue referred to through economic development on naming rights and the study that was done? I don't know if it was done in Atlantic or Canadian-wide, Sue, but that could be a related policy or, I'm not going to say footnote.
Yeah, Your Worship, I think it might be considered, we could probably change Section 11 to say related policies/documents, because I don't think that naming rights work was policy. I think it was just a study that was done.
Okay, so related policies /documents. Yeah.
Yeah. Friendly agreement on that?
You're all right with that, Deputy? It's just, again,
Councillor McKinnon?
Yeah,
you all
that's
good-
great.
Good with that, too?
Yeah, no, this is all very interesting. Definitely.
Okay. All right, so we're going to add that economic development policy, whatever, or document, whatever it's called, and then we'll add related policies/documents to that.
And can I just ask, Chair, that when we submit this to council in the package, that the application form goes with it
Yeah.
so councilors can see just what that looks like too.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I just want to thank Sue Fraser for putting this here. It's now, it's not fait accompli until it gets passed by council, but I think it's on a go-forward basis. Thank you too, Carly.
Mr. Chair, if I could excuse myself to get your budget document ready for
You
4, that would be great.
go ahead.
Thank you.
Make sure Donna's working on it too.
All right, last order of business, committee business list. Curly, I think, yeah, sure, yeah.
Sure. So really, Chair Beck, this I think is your great idea that Chantal and I are happy to implement. So within your package, it's your last attachment, I believe. It's the committee business list. So we, just for reference and background and context, we as a collective actually meet with Chair Beck usually week prior to this meeting itself. We have a pre-meeting with a draft agenda, and that really just allows for some healthy discussion and some good questions to be asked. At the same time, we know that Chair Beck at this meeting and at council gets asked additional questions and things to be looked into. So the committee business list allows us to kind of track those requests as an administration, and then provide some context as to when we believe the follow-up will be ready back for you, or when we think there can be an action or next step taken. So it's not necessarily an overly formal document, but we're just going to use it as a tracking mechanism, and the request made by the chair was to actually share it with this committee on a monthly basis as well.
So can we add to the list now?
At any time, Your Worship.
So I wanted to bring it up under new business, but this is the best opportunity to bring it up. The chair of this committee, Councillor Norman Beck, and I met with the two mayors from Stratford, Cornwall, Wayne Easter, former MP for Malpeque, and Marie Burge, who's with the Cooper Institute, I believe.
Yeah.
And the purpose of the meeting, Deputy, was to look at the issue of basic income guarantee. And any future meetings, I'm sure that you will be involved in, Deputy, but I think what Marie and Wayne wanted to do was just give a sit down with the Capital Region mayors, and I said, well, the chair of this committee, who will oversee it being brought through the proper channels, is Councillor Beck. So we did meet, and there was a good discussion. Then there was a follow-up, Councillor Beck, just last week. And I know, looking at the agenda for the Atlantic Mayors Congress in May over in Amherst, this issue will be on the agenda. And BIG and the representatives of BIG for the Prince Edward Island effort would like to come in and speak to it at this committee level to get our response. And they do have a draft bylaw. But as Councillor Beck recalls, some of the initial bylaw that they were looking at, the initial motion, talked more about services related to provincial and federal governments, health, education, social services. And we don't want to get caught in those. We're all concerned about it. We're all part of housing. We're all part of healthcare. We're all part of providing social services. But our core responsibilities are police, fire, planning, water, wastewater, recreation, economic development, tourism, and festival events. So those are the key core events. And I think that was a point that was stressed by Councillor Beck. So I think they're trying to bring in something, a proposal, Carly, a proposal for a bylaw to be passed by, or a motion to be passed by council to support the basic income guarantee effort, and use Charlottetown or Prince Edward Island as a test, not as a first site for it. And if I'm incorrect in some of that wording, Mr. Chair, I'd appreciate if you could add to it or enhance it, or...
Yeah, I guess that was my recollection too, and the large part of it is that I think it was a 3 year, I think 3 to 5 year pilot. I think is kind of what they were looking at. I think for information purposes, it certainly doesn't hurt to extend the invitation to come in here. I think it would be appropriate level to have it at. So I would be certainly supportive of coming and extending that or broadening that conversation, I guess, further than what we've already had.
Deputy Mayor, again, the meeting that took place with the Capital Region mayors was just to be with them, and I think I did ask Donna, but Donna couldn't make it because Councillor Beck, I believe the CAO from Stratford was there, Jeremy Crosby, but the CAO from Cornwall didn't make it. So we had a great discussion. It was an hour plus. It covered a lot of great points. But again, it's not obligating the city, but I believe the language in the motion that we want to forward to council has to reflect what we do at this level of government, supporting housing, supporting social services, supporting health services. And the province has already, Deputy Mayor, the province has already endorsed the basic income guarantee proposal with federal assistance. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I would definitely support them coming in as well. This is, yeah, it would be great. Thank you.
All right, Councillor McKinnon, anything else to add?
Nope, nope. Oh, it was a very interesting meeting. So, nope.
All right. Any new business? Other new business other than? Good. Motion to adjourn. Moved by Deputy Mayor Yank.